I'm changing water on this relatively new setup. Anytime I have a newer setup, I like to change water more often. And I was thinking something. This is a 20 gallon, I believe. And then this one is like a 15. And then this one is 37 gallon. This one's 15. I can't remember how much is this. I think this one may be 22. I don't know. And then my largest one is 80 gallon right here. So, I'm thinking about something. Large tanks are impressive, but how large is too large? Is there such a thing? This one is almost full, just a little bit. I always have to watch them so that my water doesn't overflow because that has happened more than once. And, thinking about aquascaping and changing your scapes often and, being creative, I came with a conclusion that 48, 20 or like 75 to 80 gallon is probably the maximum size for the freshwater tank. And anything bigger than that becomes sort of a problem. And I'm always on the lookout and chasing another tank to buy. And so I look at the height of the tank, overall stand plus the tank. Is my armpit above the edge of the aquarium? Will I be able to maintain it easily? Secondly, can a canister filter handle the aquarium? For example, on an 80 gallon, I used to have just one FX, but then I changed that to a couple canisters. So essentially, once you go over 80 gallon, the canister itself becomes large and hard to handle. And, I'm a female, which, that doesn't matter that much, but it does matter when you have a full FX6 and you can't lift it. So I think 50 gallon, 20 to 50 gallon is probably optimal for aquascaping. It gives you enough space to create something cool. It can operate on just one canister. And the filter doesn't have to be so large where it's so heavy where you can't really carry it. Or, you are kind of like, you don't want to do that chore of cleaning your filters. So if you have to have two on a tank, you're already in a large or maybe too large of a category for aquascaping. Now I do see some like really large freshwater tanks, like 72 inches or like 167 gallon. When you think about a tank that large, you would have to have like two FX6s on that thing. And not only that doesn't look great, but just think about maintenance of cleaning two FX6s. So essentially anything over 80 gallon should be a sump system. I think 80 gallon is like a top volume where you don't have a sump. This is an older tank I have. It's 37 gallons, so this is a 75p. In aquascaping, a lot of tank sizes go by centimeters. So 75, that's centimeters. So they go 60 centimeters, which is our US 24 inches. Then they go 75 centimeters, which is our, 30 some inches, maybe 32 inches or so. And then they go 90 centimeters, which is 3 feet. And then they go 120 centimeters, which is 48 inches. So this is a small tank. It's a 16 gallon water box. So that one is 24 inches, but it's not very deep. So it's a smaller tank. And so basically in, doing so well, you always dream about that huge tank like you see on YouTube, those world famous aquascapers are doing. I just don't think they're so practical. Just because some of them are so big, you would need to have like a step stool to get in. Secondly, if the tank is too large and it requires more than one canister filter, then it probably should have a sump system. And thirdly, you know, those sumps, those canisters, when you get into large sizes, they become kind of hard and cumbersome to handle, especially if you're a female, like in my case. I have an FX4, I've kept that one for a long time, but I also purchased FX6s, which I had to sell because they were just too difficult for me. You know, when you disconnect, the full FX6 weighs quite a bit of weight. So I think maybe the optimal sizes for aquascaping are 60, which is 24 inches, up to 90, or 36 inches, between 24 inches and 36 inches in width. You can pretty much find the canister filter for all of those tanks easily. I like to use Eheim Classics on them. One canister filter handles one of these tanks. I don't know if 36 inches could be handled by just like one Eheim 600. Probably would be okay if it's a low bioload. But, you know, when it comes to aquascaping, large tanks are just not it. And while they're very impressive and they're very desirable for reefing, and they're very desirable for people who keep fish, large fish especially, when it comes to aquascaping, you know, you want the clean look, you want to use lily pipes. So lily pipes are not always compatible with some of the larger filters. Don't underestimate the power of a lily pipe. Lily pipes are actually an amazing invention. Not only they're beautiful and invisible kind of in the tank, but they actually perform such a good function, better than any intake and outtake ever. So I can, you know, make another video about why lily pipes are so good, but I'm saying is like, you know, when you're picking a tank, you want, and you're thinking you're gonna have a canister, which, you know, in most cases you're gonna have a canister, or some people will have a hang-on back, but, you know, in aquascaping mostly it's gonna be canisters because they're quieter and you can attach a lily pipe to them. The maximum size is probably 80 gallons. I would never go over 80 gallons. I mean, I'm not saying I would never. I'm just saying, like, if you have a tank that big, that you should have a sump with it. So buy a reef tank if you want like a really huge tank, because it doesn't make sense to buy a 6-foot tank that operates on canisters. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't look good. It's too much maintenance. You know, I know a lot of people do it. I've done it. I had 125 with 2 canisters with 2 FXs. I'm just saying it's not, you know, that's something to consider. Then it's not just the spot you have and, you know, the aquascape you're trying to do. It's not just about how impressive your tank's gonna look like, but it is also how well can you maintain it? You know, what will that maintenance look like? How can you light that tank? You know, some tanks, if they are unusual sizes or if they are too big, it's really hard to find quality lights for them. Then you end up hanging like T8s above them, which, you know, doesn't look that great. I mean, when you get into aquascaping, you're doing it kind of for the look. I mean, look is important. So, you know, you want the light that fits, you want, you know, I mean, the canister that's pretty unobtrusive. A lot of people are doing those canisters with heaters built in. I usually don't have a heater on this tank. I just put it in because I have a betta in there, and I just made a big water change, so I don't want water to be cold for the betta. You know, like shrimp doesn't care, but bettas get cold, so I just turned that so when the water kind of warms up, I will remove that. And then, you know, I do have a pre-filter on my glass intake, which, you know, it looks better without, but because there's baby shrimp in there, I don't want them getting sucked in. So there is always a balance between beauty, the looks, and, you know, the practicality of a tank. So I'd say if you have not, if you're thinking I'm going to do a planted tank and I'm going to do it right and I'm just going to buy everything right, I think you should maybe go with 20-gallon. Aquascape that, put it on a canister filter. From that you can go to about 50 gallon, or anything in between. When you get over 50 gallon, the tanks get deeper, they get larger, they require more filtration. It just becomes less and less practical. And then at 80 gallon, I think that's like a top where anything over 80 gallon, you shouldn't really be filtering via canisters or hang-on bags and stuff. You should be filtering that with a sump system. Now, this doesn't apply to any of your like grow out tanks, quarantine tanks. They can look whichever way you want. You can put hang on back on anything. I'm just saying from the aquascaping standpoint, when we're looking at the beauty and practicality and the balance of how much stuff is showing in the tank, these sizes are kind of optimal, between 2 feet and 4 feet in length. It's good when the tank is deep. And the height, that's a personal preference, depends what you're doing in there. Like this one is pretty high, this one is pretty short. So they do have like a short model, the long model, if you want to be really long, there is a model like that. So, that there is a reason why aquascaping tanks are kind of proportioned the way they are. This one, the light turned off, but it's an ADA. And I bought this tank because of its dimensions. It is 24 and it is really, really deep. I do not know how deep it is, but it is really deep. So, and then it's not too tall. So that's why it's one of their newer cube gardens, a larger cube garden that they have. But it is still a 60, 60 meaning 24 inches. So I looked at tanks and I wanted to do the moss wall, and this was the tank to do this with. Because had I had a taller tank and then added the moss wall, it just wouldn't be so proportionate. If I had a shallower tank, like a narrower this way, front to back, then I wouldn't have enough volume. I wanted to build like this. And I'm sorry, you can see everything. It's like a mirror because it's dark. It's a dark tank. Oh gosh, you can see my whole living room now. Okay, but it's dark in there. It has like anubias and ferns and part of a carpet. So it looks a lot better in person than with all this glare. But the bottom line is those dimensions that you're picking is very important when choosing your aquascape tank. So I'd say 18 inches is probably high enough for the height. I would do 24 inches in the width, and then the depth is up to you. So that would be like what I recommend as the aquascape tank to start with, and then you can go up from there. Thanks for watching.